jazz was born in New Orleans, which was in the 1800s the most musical city in America. But New Orleans was a major center of the slave trade. Beginning in 1817, slaves in New Orleans were permitted to sing and dance every Sunday afternoon in a place called Congo Square. The slaves' music, filled with complex, percussive rhythms, seemed to provide an authentic glimpse of Africa, but most of the slaves of Congo Square had never even seen Africa. Other slaves had been brought from the interior of the American South, bringing with them work songs, spirituals, and the call and response of the Baptist Church. Benjamin Latrobe, the noted architect, witnessed one of these performances in 1819 and left us with a vivid written account of the event and made several sketches of the instruments used. The drawings confirmed that the musicians of Congo Square were playing percussion and stringed instruments virtually identical to those characteristic of indigenous African music. Later documents add to our knowledge of public slave dances in New Orleans, but still leave us with many open questions. Congo Square may have looked like nothing but a party, but to play an African hand drum in 1819 in the United States was a tremendous act of resistance. The dances themselves, marked by clusters of people moving in a circular pattern, harken back to one of the most pervasive ritual ceremonies of Africa. The dance became known as the ring shout. The appearance of African tradition in New Orleans is only one of many documented instances in the New World. This tradition persisted well into the 20th century. The Congo Square dances continued until somewhere around 1885. Their disappearance coincided with the emergence of the first jazz band in New Orleans. Even after the public gathering ceased, the tradition of the ring shout lived on in many ways. The ring later straightened itself to become the second line of jazz funerals. Above all, this transplanted African ritual loomed large in the collective memory of the city's black community, even among those too young to have participated in it. Buddy Bolden, who legend and scattered first-person accounts credit as the earliest jazz musician, performed with his band at Globe Hall. The cultural gap between these two types of music is dauntingly wide. Little is known about his tragic life.
Buddy Bolden invented that beat that we call the Big Four, that skip on the fourth beat, or so legend has it. The Big Four is when you accent the second, fourth beat of a march. In a strict march, you'll be going doom-ch, 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 doom-ch. With the Big Four, you go doom-ch, 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 go doom-ch, 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 go doom. So on that fourth beat, the drum and the cymbal hit together. And that point is where jazz music started to really get its lilt. The trumpets, they were playing. But now, I have the Big Four. Boom, 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 da-dum, boom, 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 boom. So when I phrase it, I'm gonna make it sound like me, and I'm gonna play with another entire feeling and groove and use all the different growls and shouts and cries. So now it becomes. You're playing to make it sound not like trumpet, but like Buddy Bolden. Now, you're also listening to the clarinet. So the clarinet might play a little something, and you have to stop playing. So you might say, he's playing at the same time. Everything is organized a certain way, but at every second, all of you are making a decision to make that music stronger and to organize that music more and more. That's jazz music.
By the time Bolden began playing jazz, the Americanization of African music had already begun, and with it began the Africanization of American music, a synergistic process that we will continue to revisit. Anthropologists call this process syncretism. Syncretism is the blending together of cultural elements that previously existed separately. This dynamic, so essential to the history of jazz, remains powerful even in the present day. The mixture of African and European culture began long before the slave dances in Congo Square. You may have heard in the news that the United States was interested in purchasing Greenland from Denmark. While this sounds kind of crazy today, it's actually how a lot of the United States got its territory, like Alaska, Florida, or Louisiana. The purchase of Louisiana was a giant step for the United States because the country would have been half the size otherwise. It was named Louisiana in honor of French King Louis XIV. So New Orleans was ceded by France to Spain. Then Napoleon succeeded in forcing its return from Spain, but this renewed French control lasted only 3 years before possession passed to the United States as part of the Louisiana Purchase. As a result, French and Spanish settlers played a decisive role in shaping the distinctive character of New Orleans. In addition to all this, we also had people coming in from Germany, Italy, England, Ireland, and Scotland, who all made substantial contributions to the local culture. The city's black inhabitants were equally diverse as well. Some were brought directly from various parts of Africa, some were native-born Americans, others came to the United States via the Caribbean. This resulted in an exotic mixture of European, Caribbean, African, and American elements. This turned Louisiana into an extreme melting pot, and it would create a cultural fusion that would serve as a breeding ground for many of the great hybrid musics of modern times. Not just jazz, but also Cajun, Zydeco, blues. Other new styles flourished as a result of this cultural environment. Can it be a mere coincidence that the same commingling of Spanish, French, and African influence was present in New Orleans at the birth of jazz? Latin cultures have always seemed receptive to the fresh influences from Africa. Indeed, in the area of music alone, the number of successful African and Latin hybrids, including salsa, calypso, samba, tango, and cumbia, to name only a few, is so great one can only speculate these two cultures retain a residual magnetic (1807). Some 400,000 native-born Africans had been brought to America, most of them transported from West Africa, forcibly taken away from their homeland, deprived of their freedom, and torn from the social fabric that had given structure to their lives. These transplanted Americans clung with even greater fervor to those elements of their culture that they could carry with them from Africa. in blackface, mimicking and most often ridiculing the music, dance, and culture of the slave population.
The history of blackface is long and complex and deeply ingrained in our culture.
Who was that lady I saw you with this afternoon?
That was no lady. That was my wife.
Even Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd blacked up.
Fantastic, isn't it?
For more than 100 years, white and then black performers wore dark makeup and created not only a popular theatrical form, but stereotypes that are still with us today.
Often, the writer of minstrel songs worked with little actual knowledge of Southern black music. A surprising number of these composers hailed from the Northeast, and the most celebrated writer of minstrel-inflected songs, Stephen Foster, created a powerful, romanticized image of Southern folk life, yet his experience with the South was restricted to a brief interlude spent in Kentucky and a single trip down the Mississippi to New Orleans.
The hat, the overlong tailcoat, mocking. It always gives me the jolt that racist history does. Blackface is so tied to comedy, to people enjoying themselves, to people having fun, that rattles you still more.
Well, Mr. Tambo, you seem to be enjoying yourself this evening.
Enjoying myself? I sure is.
White minstrel performers claimed that what they did on stage was based on their perceptions of how black people lived.
Some of this came out of a genuine fascination with the music, the songs, the dances, the performance styles of black people.
But it's also where Jump Jim Crow was born, along with other characters depicted as lazy, lying, or buffoonish. Remember, this was all happening before the Civil War.
Slavery was all about creating visions, types, stereotypes of an entire race of people as subhuman in every way.
By the 1860s, African Americans began using blackface on stage.
Why on earth would a black performer put on blackface and demean him or herself?
Look, this is the 19th century. They had limited options. They were expected to.
Why?
Because it made the audiences comfortable. You can be fascinated, you can be excited, but you can always feel superior.
In effect, the black makeup on a black performer became a theatrical mask with many layers of meaning. Professor Eric Lotz.
The mask, I think, says to white audiences, you have nothing to fear. Go ahead, enjoy yourself. To black audiences, I think any number of things might have been communicated, like, can you believe that these people are making me put on this mask so they will be entertained? You know, in other words, there's a kind of winking to the black audience. But it gave black performers access to the stage.
One of the biggest black stars to come out of the minstrel tradition was Bert Williams, who wore blackface from vaudeville to Broadway.
It's clear that he was a genius of a performer.
But how did he reconcile performing in this demeaning art form?
He was very melancholy about it. He knew it was necessary for his career, as all other black performers knew it.
Minstrelsy on stage basically died out in the 1920s, but blackface lived on in the movies.
I'd walk a million miles for one of your smiles.
In 1927, Al Jolson starred in the pioneering talking picture The Jazz Singer, playing a young man who prefers singing popular music rather than his family's traditional Hebrew prayers.
But I know where the sunshine sets.
I don't want to look at it. What reaction do you get?
I totally understand.
Wait a minute. I don't like the way he said that.
In the Our Gang comedies of the 1930s, Spanky appeared in blackface.
Buckwheat, did you say Spanky was in a lot of trouble? Yes, sir.
The gag here is that the gang doesn't realize that that's Spanky in blackface until they actually see Buckwheat.
Hiya, Buckwheat. Hiya, Buckwheat.
So the gist of it is that you put blackface makeup on anyone and they become black.
And that's supposed to be hilarious.
And it's supposed to be really funny.
When he grows up.
And it goes on. During the golden age of the Hollywood musical, Judy Garland.
When he walks down the street, folks will say, pleased to meet Mr. Franklin D. Roosevelt Jones.
Bing Crosby.
That's why we celebrate this blessed February day, Abraham.
Fred Astaire, and many others, all blacked up. It's still in the culture.
It is too easy, I think, simply to dismiss the history of blackface as that racist stuff. And most of us are better than that. I don't think most of us are better than that. We are that. That's what we are.
You know, some people say in order to move forward, we need to put this stuff behind us, as painful, as just upsetting that it may be.
Well, you know, any form of history that gets suppressed or repressed or erased out, it comes back to haunt. What has to happen now is a discussion, an acknowledgement of this charged, complicated, painful history.
Later generations of black entertainers, influenced by the popularity of these secondhand evocations of their own culture, imitated in turn the white stereotypes of African American behavior. Its impact on early jazz life, minstrel music presents a rather convoluted situation. A black imitation of a white caricature of black music exerts its influence on another hybrid form of African and European music.